What is this place?
The sets are great. I think the art department is absolutely genius.
What's going on in here?
Just a little spring cleaning. The sets are masterful. It's just a fabulous space.
Oh my God.
As soon as you step foot onto this insane asylum, it is like nothing you've ever seen. It looks completely real.
Rise and shine.
It's scary. It's like you're really in an asylum. It's really well done.
Yeah, it's creepy. You're like alone with yourself, and you're like, ah!
Hope you're not planning on making a toll call. Place like Briafcliff, the set that we're in, it's pretty horrifying.
I demand to speak to someone!
When you have such a dedicated team as we do on American Horror, and the perfectionism which Ryan has clearly laid down that everyone is running with, you get the most extraordinary, exquisite set design and set decoration.
We have a phenomenal team of artists and unbelievably hardworking, creative individuals that are building this world around us that we get to go in, and the directors get to go in and lay shots out and lock scenes in, and you know, there's so much to draw from.
It becomes a character in itself. So as an actor, you're working not only with your fellow actors, but you're working with this giant character, which is the set, and that is very helpful. It stimulates you.
Ryan, one of the first things he said, okay, well, it takes place in an asylum, in an old tuberculosis hospital, but how do we get away from doing white walls and all the sort of cliches you were saying, white and tile? So how do we make it not look like that sort of medicinal environment that we've all seen a million times? And I said, well, what if we go with something like a really, really dark tile surface everywhere? So it's like shiny and weird and like reptilian skin and just a lot creepier. And so we landed eventually on this idea of glazed brick. You look at it, and that sort of brick wall thing is still something you associate with public institutions. So it's not unrealistic, it's still grounded in something. So it's very exciting, visually.
Come on. The colors are amazing, and it shows up really well on camera. This stuff's all plastic, I think. Yeah, it's all plastic, but I mean, it looks real, and it feels real, especially these cells. Like, these cells are very scary.
Let me out! Come back, let me out! Especially when you're locked in a solitary cell, it's easy to believe.
So we're going into this will be the hallway, main hallway, or what we're calling the ward hallway. Basically, this is where the inmates live. And they all live in cells behind these patient doors, obviously very large, prison-like doors. It's a horror show, so we're taking a few liberties here to make it a little bit more spooky, a little bit more dark than a real asylum might be. But of course, we're in 1964, so a lot of these asylums weren't that far from this.
The hardest part about dressing an institutional place is to have it have some sense of style, because it's institutional. And typically, you have to find the beauty in something that is so basic.
We're in the bakery of the asylum, and we call it the Directory Kitchen and Bakery.
I think the bakery is one of my favorite sets. It feels like it's very underground to me, and I love the architecture.
Some of the pieces here are really quite old. These are the kind of things that are just like kind of one of a kind. Like, this is a very interesting, curved, cool cabinet. When we dress sets like this, we want to find the most interesting, cool, weird shapes, especially because it's horror.
It's our paint crew. They're putting in the finishing touches on what this is the common room. This is where all of our inmates will interact with one another. A lot of big scenes in here. Actually, it looks a little like a train station, but it's actually inspired by a number of rooms in asylums. The big skylight isn't uncommon, a lot of steel. Again, we've gone with a little more of a Victorian look in here. We're not basing it on anything specific. None of these rooms exist anywhere in reality. We invented a world for this year, and I think that's what makes it so exciting.
Sister Jude is on the warpath.
How it came about, the design of the Briarcliff inmates, was once the sets were starting to get built and we saw the colors, like, okay, there's a lot of green, a lot of gray, we got to kind of shift from that. So The obvious color was blue, but then we didn't want it to be too happy, so we had to over-dye everything with beiges and grays to make it look a little down and sad.
So here is the costume trailer for American Horror Story.
Then I meet with Mark and Ellen, and I brought all the samples of what I thought we would be going with.
And then we peppered it with some lavenders and mauves so that we have a little bit more interesting palette.
Mark would show me what they were thinking for different palettes, and so we could work together and say, okay, if I'm going to dye like the women's nightgowns were originally lavender, well, we can't have a pretty lavender nightgown at Briarcliff, so we worked together on what color, like a muddy plum or a putty colored beige, but we want to make sure that it doesn't blend into the walls because that's what they're going to be wearing all the time, so obviously we don't want to put them in green shirts and all the walls are green. It would just not be very interesting to look at. So Mark and I worked very closely together on the color palettes.
Well. Isn't this pleasant, the three of us sitting around like civilized people?
When I first started looking for the furniture for the common room, we originally started looking a little bit more 50s. Ryan said, oh no, that isn't really where I want to go with it. So we went kind of 30s, 20s Victorian and dilapidated, and he was happy with it.
We have to talk.
The sets are very creepy and have actually done a great deal to inform, I think, a lot of performances. I mean, there's a sofa over there with like a blood stain on it from what happens in episode 5, and you're just like, we were in here sometimes, and Jessica and Evan and I were like, oops, I had an accident in the chair, because it's just like this really disgusting chair. It's like just not right.
Sister Jude calls this her stairway to heaven.
There's a very interesting story about how we came to the main lobby and the staircase that is the central feature in the main lobby. There was an asylum in New York on the east side of Manhattan. It was called the Octagon because there was an octagonal lobby with this beautiful sweeping spiral staircase. And I'd seen that and thought it was interesting, but initially the lobby wasn't the most important space in the script. But Ryan then sent me this picture of that very lobby that I knew about and said, I love this, I love the kind of Escher-esque sense that you get from this stairway running up, beautiful. I was thinking, well, we can't really spend the resources to do that. Well, he said, no, we'll write scenes for it. I want it for the tone and the feeling. So it's quite different than what we ended up with, because the one in that building was much lighter, very different style of architecture. It was Beaux-Arts, classical architecture. Ours is much more sort of Victorian eclecticism. It's more Romanesque is the style of these spaces, you know, arches and brick and so forth. That's very Romanesque. It's scarier, basically.
I demand you give me access to your laboratory.
Dr. Arden's laboratory, in its initial conception as you're reading the script, you think it could be a very simple set. This is a laboratory, he's doing these horrible things to people.
Witness the next stage of human evolution.
And Ryan immediately said, I was thinking of a operating theater as a typology for the set. I was like, oh my God, that's great. It's more voyeuristic, you're more involved and more implicated in what's going on.
The operating theater is really probably the most exciting one of those sets. It's like science as spectacle, and science is like the inhumanity of the patient on the table and all these people sitting and watching. The idea of being on an operating table and being watched in that inhuman way, I think is very, very scary.
I hope you don't mind if I don't use anesthetic. It interferes with my readings.
And then, of course, when Mark draws a huge operating light in the center of the space, it's like, I guess I better start looking for one of those. And we wanted it to feel like it was a hovering UFO, because in the beginning of the season, there's references of the UFO. So I thought that that would be an interesting image to have a really big light hanging over it.
My operating theater is genius. It helps me a great deal because I don't have to do much, because the environment is so redolent of the horror. After this, you'll probably live forever.
That one's one of my favorites because it's one of those times where you say, well, this isn't necessary. We don't need to build all this. And then when you see the scenes, you see the dailies, you're like, it couldn't be any other way.
Would you care to see what your benevolence has produced?
Then there's the secret hallway that leads back into Arden's office. I had a lot of fun with this, with Arden's. James Cromwell is about 6'6". He's very tall, and Mark designed the set really low. So he's kind of looming over everything, and we really wanted a very dark palette. Everything just kind of gets absorbed into into his world.
The genius of Mark Worthington and his production design team is they really captured the feeling of the rooms and associating the feeling of the rooms with the characters. I mean, you look at Dr. Arden's office. Nothing else in the show looks like Dr. Arden's office, but it's a perfect fit for him.
Lady reporter's here.
This is Sister Jude's office, and we come in here and you'll see it's quite different. It's very light compared to what we've seen. It's very monastic. One of the things that I love about working with Ryan is that he allows you to not over-decorate sets. A lot of times these days I think we have a tendency to do too much, and it gets very cluttered, it gets very busy. It really sort of gets in the way, and he very much likes a minimal approach, so do I. So the whole idea here was that it was incredibly monastic, very simple, very spare. Sister Jude working through some of her issues, of course. This is the hydrotherapy room where Kit gets dusted down for louse when he first shows up. This is one of my favorite images in the whole show, is this shower, which is called a cage shower for obvious reasons. I saw this image from a book. There's a book called Asylum that Ryan and I used a lot for inspiration for this. And this was one of the images.
In the hydrotherapy room, Ryan wanted Keds, the white sneakers, and he wanted them filling up a bathtub. I had to go to a costume rental house and rented every single pair of white Keds that I could get my hands on to put into the bathtub.
Ah, Mr. Walker.
This room, I think of all of them, gives me, oddly, it's the white room. It's not that dark, but this is the one that gives me the creeps. This, it's just shiny, weird. It feels like sweaty skin, which, that's always good for horror. So, anyway. This was the creature room in episode 1 where Adam Levine has his arm removed rather abruptly. For this episode, it's called The Hole, so, consistently unpleasant. This was a window that actually, in this case, because it's supposed to be solitary confinement and really nasty for this episode, we literally bricked it up as if there were a window there, but now, of course, even the little bit of light that admitted is gone to make it even that much more hellish.
Back when the epidemic was at its worst, we'd sometimes move more than 100 bodies a week down through here.
The death chute is based on a real tunnel from a real mental institution. That's how they remove the bodies from these places. You don't want people to see it. Just take them out to the death chute.
We should totally do it in the death chute.
Oh my God, you are so demented.
The hardest thing we've had to do is always switch back and forth to period. So when we did 2012, we have to trash the place. We literally throw refuse and everything all around, and then in a day, it has to be cleaned up and look pristine again.
Hey, bloody face!
Bloody face! It was really fun. It felt like we were actually exploring a real haunted house and exploring a real insane asylum and getting to do it for the first time in our scenes, and it was the first time we were actually seeing the sets.
You scared, pussy?
Our part in this is showing a contemporary view of what's happened to this place, and then you go back to the past and see how it got to be this dilapidated, old, terrifying place that everybody stays away from, except me and my stupid wife, who decided to go check it out and wind up getting in a lot of trouble.
It's creepy, man. You go on those sets and they're cavernous, and you really feel like you're in that asylum. And you also get the sense of, like, if you were in this asylum, you have no chance. Like, you can't get out of here.
And action.
People ask that a lot with the show. Is it as scary shooting it as it is watching it? Yeah, it can be terrifying. I've gotten lost sometimes in dark corners of the stages, and that's a little scary, but that happens to me all the time. I'm always getting lost.
And action.
Yeah, some days you don't want to go on those sets. You think, oh God, the sun is shining, it's like a nice day. It's grim. It's very, very grim.
Mark Worthington knocked it out of the park. I was just fascinated at all the colors and textures and crazy details. I find it exciting.
The sets are uncomfortable. They creep you out. Oddly, I don't like spending time in them because it makes me feel weird and creepy and uncomfortable. And that's a success as far as I'm concerned, because it's just an institution where all of these people don't want to be. They've all been put here against their will. It's unpleasant and scary, so that's a victory. If even I come through here and I'm hurrying my way through to get out of here because I don't really like it.
You're safe now. Back to Briarcliff, where you belong.
Want a story? Write this down.
This season covers a lot of territory.
Anytime you enter an insane asylum, you know you're in trouble.
It's scary because of the aliens, I mean, the Raspers, the people running this place.
The moral compass seems to live in the gray area.
You tried to fly away, so I had to clip your wings. It's a potpourri of horrible things.
Kill me. We're talking about human beings in the darkest places.
It's a boy.
This show asks people what they're really afraid of, you know? Show it to them, see how they react.
Mr. Walker.
I would define this season as a roller coaster ride to the pit of hell.
We're gonna get you killed.
So the idea for season 2, the key was to do something really different. So we definitely need a different location, different time period was helpful.
Let's do it, babe. Let's tell everyone.
There's a wide range of social and ethical explorations going on in this season of the show.
We have a problem.
The little sapphic reporter?
Well, the treatment of the issues of interracial marriage and homosexuality in the show, I feel like, are incredibly accurate for the time.
Your hospital still administers electroshock therapy to treat homosexuality. It's barbaric. Behavior modification is the current standard.
In the 50s and 60s, the horror of our culture in its relationship with women, gays, ill people was pretty damn wacky.
Please just give me a few more seconds. I know I can do it.
So you've got the institution, you've got the criminally insane, you've got the world of psychiatry at that time, and you've got the Catholic Church. You have this confluence of, like, barbarism in a way.
There is no God. People can relate to these characters, questioning your faith and science versus religion, so it makes it a relatable psychological thriller.
I'll always win against the patriarchal male.
Bully for you.
I always classify it like it's a workplace drama. It's our version of it, though. And so you have Jessica and James Cromwell characters, and they're fighting for power in this workspace.
Your ineptitude is staggering.
But those are all very real, relatable situations. And then we just take it, and so it turns out the guy fighting you for power happens to be a Nazi who does experiments and has a micro penis.
Did you have an accident?
It's an extreme version of that guy at work you hate.
Go to hell.
But it's just that guy at work you hate. And for Jessica, she likes to beat people up and give them shock treatment and falsely imprison people, but those are just details.
Mental illness is the fashionable explanation for sin.
It was very kind of attractive, the idea, as an actress, for me to play this character.
Sister, a little compassion would go a long way.
Me? I'm a beacon of compassion.
She does truly believe in what she's doing, that they are trying to save souls and they are trying to rehabilitate madness.
And then so we'll take that character and how do we spin that? How do we spin that look, and how do we spin that idea? And it's like, well, what if she was really a whore just a few years ago and she was a drunk and she hit a girl with a car and so she has this horrible secret, but the reality is she really wants to be that again.
No, you can't do this to me!
You did it to yourself.
Come back here, you son of a bitch!
And it was also a conversation we had at the beginning about, to Jessica, it's like you gotta be able to embrace the darkness of this character in order for us to get you to the place where you feel for her.
She doesn't belong here. I put her here. Help her.
What they wrote for me last season was, spot on. I mean, really great monologues. I don't have that this year, but what I do have is a character that goes from A to Z.
No, you come back here, you little shit! I'm gonna kill you!
So it allows me to play just about everything that's out there to play.
Can you imagine the disillusionment, the shame, and the disgust I feel?
So it gives me a little bit to do.
I'm Dr. Arthur Arden. I run this institution. I didn't actually know what the gimmick was. I didn't know that actually until I got the first 4 scripts, and I thought, what have I got myself into? How am I gonna play? This guy rapes 2 women and cuts one of their legs off. As we started to work on it, I began to see where the consciousness was. Arden has seen and participated in a horror that is indelible and warps you. Of course, even the Nazis didn't come out of their mother's womb as Nazis. They were created, and he was created by social and familial and psychological forces that he doesn't deal with. And out of those forces, horror emerges.
The idea has always been science versus religion, is the idea about these two forces fighting with each other. The idea is science can be so helpful to people, but it can also really wreck people. And this is what happens when you do it without caring about the people involved.
You have no idea what it means to have lost you. It's wonderful to work in something that has as many edges and possibilities as this does.
No, I really shouldn't. Sister Jude says sweets lead to sin.
I said, take a taste.
She represents purity, and she is the innocent soul of all the characters. She has the best intentions, and she has really devoted her life to God and to the church, and she wants everyone to be happy. That's why she gets into so much trouble.
You touch me again, you will die.
It's something that we talked about with being possessed and what that really means, and something that the writers and I talked about a lot. It's as if your id takes over.
Come on, big boy, show me what you got.
The element of sex hadn't factored in, and then it comes in and becomes very clear and important, and she leans right into that.
Don't you want to feel what it's like? At least once.
So there's this explosion of all of that taking over in a very extreme way.
This is a time when anything can happen if someone wants it enough.
What on earth do we want if not to save souls?
I entered into the part that he wasn't evil. He is really there to bring the disenfranchised together, to sort of spiritually align them through the church.
If I can turn a man like you towards Christ, imagine the reforms I could make on a national scale.
He's crippled by his ambition and will do anything to kind of climb the ranks of the church.
I feel like a new man.
He is very good at convincing himself that it's for the greater good, whatever his actions.
Timothy Howard.
I think he loses track fairly swiftly. I think that's the world of Briarcliff.
Sister Jude is dead.
People get taken away from their moral center pretty quickly.
You're under arrest for the murder of Donna Burton, Allison Rydell, and Alma Walker.
The difference between the two seasons, especially my character, is that in the first season, Tate was a villain, and in this season, Kit is the hero, I guess you could call him.
Help me find God. I'll admit to everything.
My child.
I almost think that Kit's a little bit more difficult to play, because to put it into some form of reality is incredibly difficult. I found that very hard.
You want to kill me?
No, Mr. Walker. I want to almost kill you.
So I kind of come to set, with a slight plan, knowing that it's going to get turned upside down and thrown in a washing machine and then hung out to dry.
I don't know. Those last 6 months made up for a lifetime of horrors, but she sure seemed happy.
But it's nice because you don't have time to overthink things. You just you get the script and then decide and go.
My character is based on Lizzie Borden, who killed her dad and stepmother in 1892, I think. You're like, what?
Are you repulsed by what I am?
No, I admire you.
That's what was really beautiful about her relationship with Kit, is that I think it's the first person that she trusts and says her real story. And at the same time, it's very deranging, because it's not like she poisoned them, something discreet. No, she went there. It's like, what? I'm dead now? I got freaked out and called saying, am I dead? Am I going back to France? The answer was like, did you watch American Horror Story?
I'll look after her.
There's always a way. When the aliens, I was naked on this table, naked with gelatine all over my body in this very, very cold room. That was scary in itself. And then you have these alien fingers just caressing you and getting into your mouth and kind of looking for orifices to come in, and you're like, ah!
Don't fight it.
It'll only make it worse.
Well, Alma was whisked off to the alien compound or whatever.
Help me!
It's funny because her experience there with the aliens and being pregnant and that whole bit, you don't realize how traumatic it was because you see her as a very kind of wistful, mystical, light being, and you don't think that she's going through any sort of pain while she's there, which you find out later that it was actually quite traumatic for her.
You really think your life was so much better before?
Before my husband brought home an axe murderer, yes. I wanted Alma to be quite quaint and sweet, and that's who she was supposed to be, you know, until she axes Grace in the back.
What are you doing? Can I tell you a secret? Nutmeg makes all the difference in the world.
Coming into the season and knowing that Thredson would end up being the bloody face was cool for me. It allowed me to play completely in opposite direction at the beginning of the season and then slowly kind of peel back the reality of who he is.
We're leaving right after dinner.
Is this real?
Bloody face, he's your killer, man. We always knew it was going to be the Zach Quinto character, and he comes in as such a hero. You're like, he's the one guy that can actually protect us. But that's because he's the craziest of the lot.
You make furniture.
Lamps, mainly.
What kind of material do you use?
Skin.
I came into the season most looking forward to the people that I got to work with.
We're going to continue our therapy now, Lena.
My great friend Sarah Paulson, who I just think is so phenomenal in the season and doing such amazing work and brave work, and we just enjoy each other so much that it's very easy to come to work.
My baby. Baby needs colostrum.
Even though some of the material is unfathomably disturbing and unsettling, we managed to support each other.
I can either cut your throat or I can strangle you. I don't believe in guns.
So it was heavy at times, certainly, but it was a great fun also.
I'm actually relieved. Living with secrets is not healthy.
I spent time hoping that he would die because I think he deserves to. It's certainly been really fun to play, but I'd hoped that justice would be served. I think it is.
Prison's too good for you.
Well, the conversation I had with Ryan prior to the start of shooting was over like several glasses of wine, and he was like, "Oh, lady, you'll be back as a reporter." And I was like, okay. But I knew nothing other than that. Didn't know my name. I didn't know how prominent my character would be or how ancillary to the story it would be. I just didn't know.
You're out of your depth, Miss Lana Banana.
Then he gave me the first 4 scripts, and I was like, wait, I get to play her? Lana Banana is me? That's so great. I was very excited.
You think Upton Sinclair waits to be assigned a story? I'm making this my story.
What gets her in trouble is that she really wants to prove herself as a reporter. She takes these risks and she lies, and it certainly bites her hard in the ass.
Please help me, I don't belong here. Get me out of here!
It's very harrowing what happens to Lana, and some of the things have been very difficult to shoot. I had to excuse myself a couple times to just walk away and take a deep breath, because when you've been strapped down to a bed for 7 hours and being violated, and it's just really, it's intense. And that mask is, I have to say, it's not a lot of acting going on for me in that terror moment, because it's really, even though I know whose head is under there, it's just really unpleasant and very easy to be terrified. But at the same time,
I'm pregnant.
The actress in me is like completely thrilled and exhilarated by the opportunity to be responsible for telling her story.
I always wanted to know what it was like inside the mind of a killer. Now I know.
I've never had the dramatic ball thrown to me with this much weight. So for that, I feel really glad.
I can't.
Even though it's sort of sick, because I'm basically saying, I've been tortured and I liked it.
I loved you even when you were still in your mother's womb.
Ryan had called me and tells me this whole plot of Bloody Face Jr., and I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. I loved it, and I was just like instantly in.
This is delicate work.
I play a lot of guys who, you know, either lawyer, doctor, psychiatrist, and Ryan was really interested in me playing someone who was blue collar, not the doctor from last season.
I want to stop. I really do.
So it was a nice reprisal in a twisted way of me being on the couch trying to seek help.
Was that the first time you touched yourself?
No.
I skinned a cat.
I think we get to look into who he really is and why he became the way he became.
Your father once told me he didn't believe in guns.
And I think that's sympathetic and fascinating at the same time.
It's not your fault, baby.
American Horror, I think everybody knows a lot of people are gonna die in many ways. Johnny has it coming, so it's not much of a surprise.
The biggest part of this show and this as a series is that every year it's different. And another big part of it is that we keep a stable of actors, sort of like a company, to play different characters.
American Horror Story is different from any other show on TV just because of that. And for actors, it's a dream come true.
If I ever hear you call yourself stupid again, I'll cane you bloody.
It's nice because, I mean, it's interesting to watch who played what last year and coming back and creating these new characters, these new roles.
Now leave this place. You're not wanted here.
I was invited, unlike you.
It's the same show, but it's a different horror story. You know, so it's sort of this idea of doing repertory television.
Aren't you sick of me yet? My favorite actor to work with on the series is Frances Conroy.
Peace is so close, sister.
So, you know, I thought, oh, that's too bad she's not coming back. And then suddenly she was back. And it's great because I love playing scenes with her.
Baby cakes, I'm only just starting to toy with you.
I thought it was fantastic. I think it's a really radical idea to have a totally different storyline with different characters.
No, get off of me!
It's great.
What do you say we blow this pub stand, go savage a few elves, and then suck on each other?
We really added some amazing actors to the little troupe. I don't know, there's something quite wonderful about that.
Okay, and action. The first episode was like a pilot. You know, it was setting a completely new tone, a completely new world, completely new characters. You were just like, oh my God, how do you do this? How do you shoot an insane asylum in 1964 in Los Angeles, California in present day? Welcome to Briafcliff.
Sanitariums presents a lot of visual possibilities because the normal rules of human behavior simply don't apply. And within a horror format, you can do just about anything, lighting-wise, composition-wise, anything that makes you feel unnerved. It'll be dirty. Just come on to him and then just stay on him. Don't waver around too much.
Michael Goy is amazing. He's always got an idea. It's like he's lighting it in the sparest way. He's always playing, and he's always bringing something to it.
We think he's responsible for the deaths of at least 5 people, including the elderly couple who lived in the house formerly owned by Oliver Thridson.
I wanted to bring a whole bunch of visual influences to the table. You know, we attach all of these different styles strictly from an emotional point of view.
I've never been happier.
It's a show where you can do anything you want creatively.
And action.
Because of the architecture and the characters and the dialogue.
Just looking for a fresh way to have a point of view shot.
It's so insane what happens. I mean, people are possessed and they're doing, I mean, it's just, and aliens, I mean, there were no limits.
Go. Oh, that was good.
The insane asylum aspect is endlessly exciting. We all have tons of references of great movies that we've seen, you know, and we get to kind of homage some of them and try and come up with new things to deal with as well. It's a great area to play around in.
That's why you became a whore, isn't it, sister?
With horror, it's like a genre of iconography, and so you have imagery that are just, you always find in a horror movie, and so you always end up pulling from there. The key is to try and take that and twist it in some way that makes it so that it's a little unexpected.
Very Christmassy.
It's a sort of conversation between cinephiles and lovers of horror and scary movies.
Rosemary's Baby.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Todd Browning's Freaks.
Cuckoo's Nest.
The Shining.
Clockwork Orange.
What did you do with the skin?
To me, it's like the perfect stew of all of those movies, all done in this very Hitchcockian way that Ryan is very good at using all those things as inspiration.
We love to be scared. I think there's something cathartic in being scared as well.
You can scream all you want. No one will hear you.
I think people just like to feel alive, and that's a safer way, in my opinion, of doing it.
I think the purpose of horror, that by watching it recreated in fiction, you have all the feeling about how much suffering we can contain and endure. So this is great.
I'm terrified of the show. It scares me, I can't sleep. So one of the reasons why I did it is to face my fear of scary, creepy things.
I watched the show with the lights off, for sure. I mean, it's terrifying, but it's great. You don't want to miss it.
Did you murder your wife?
No. And I'm not crazy. I think institutions are inherently scary because there's insane people in them, and insane people are completely unpredictable. And when you can relate and put yourself in the character's shoes, you can feel the fear all that much more.
We're gonna burn those bad memories right out.
When you think of what they were doing under the auspices of trying to heal people, it's insane in itself, completely insane.
You know, that line between sanity and insanity in yourself, sometimes you're like, ooh, you know, where is that?
You've become unhinged, that's clear.
Everyone is terrified of going crazy. There's that line about, you know, when God wants to punish a man, the first thing he does is make him insane.
I'm better now.
It's like there's nothing worse than being insane because there's no way out of it. It's your perception of the world.
Just remember, if you look in the face of evil, evil's gonna look right back at you.
I feel like there but the grace of God go we. The idea of being locked up and not having control over your own mind and being at the mercy of other people's opinions about your state of being is really terrifying, I think.
We're gonna slay that monster together, you and I.
Because I think anybody can imagine, what would you do if you were locked up there? How would you try to get out? It's how close it is, I think, to possibility that makes it more terrifying.
I'm not crazy. Pray for us.
We're at Tinsley Studio. This is the makeup effects lab where we create all the prosthetics and makeup effects for American Horror Story. We're actually sitting in the lab right now where we produce the pieces, from sculpture to molding to the casting, painting. It's all done right here behind us.
We all did the first year together, and there were some beautiful makeups in it, but it just ramped up for season 2 to an incredible degree where it spanned everything.
Play with me! Play with me!
Right off the bat, we got to do a pinhead this year. And I'm like, if that's what we're starting off with, right, what's coming up?
Why is it we don't allow food in the rooms?
Rats!
That's right.
Initially, people were like,
they found a real pinhead.
yeah.
How did they get this person?
They were really, what?
We wanted somebody who was thin and gaunt that we could build on top of, but who was in perfect proportion and just small. And that's when Naomi sort of jumped out. Her image just sort of jumped out as.
And I know we had discussions in the beginning, how much eyebrow hair should she have? It's like she should have slightly unibrow.
Yeah.
It should look like very manly,
right,
but not over the top. We don't want her to look like Sasquatch. And then I think we had painted on just a nice 5 o'clock, kind of a junior high mustache on her, just to give her that.
Just to push her.
Not too manly, not like high school. Again. Not high school, right, junior high mustache.
Junior high mustache.
Keeping it young.
He took one look at the shape of my head, and I was locked up for good. That's how it works with us freaks.
She wears one walleye contact, which is really great. And she wears these great big man hands with all this hair in them that everybody's always really fascinated with. They're always like, oh, look at her hands.
Pepper Pea.
She has a big sweater, and she has this little hunch that she does too. So it's a complete transformation.
She's crowning.
Pepper is one of those makeups that it was an instant successful makeup and people loved it.
I mean, I knew the minute we put that makeup on her, I was like, oh, I'm so stoked that we get to do this. And one of those makeups, you know, if you get a chance to do in your career, you're very, very lucky, so.
The Raspers was this concept that Ryan had where the doctor was injecting the patients with syphilis and tuberculosis and all kinds of steroids and diseases, and so he wanted that reflected not only in their skin, but the concept was to make this a sort of elite race that was indestructible. So of course we started coming up with design after design, and I think it was somewhere around the 70th design, there was still no definitive answer.
It's getting there.
It's getting there. And so at some point we started making pieces, and that's when Mike and the rest of the crew started taking all these different ideas that we had built and started putting together randomly and literally creating those characters during the day of shooting.
I tried to convince them to let me wear this on the plane home one night, because I'd take the red eye home back to New York, and they wouldn't let me do it. That'd be funny.
There's a fine line between doing a monster makeup and creating something that still has some humanity left in it, so you feel for
that
those.
was Ryan was really specific about that.
They're supposed to be still inmates.
I want to see the people.
Surely with Shelley, I mean, I think Shelley being my favorite Rasper. When you saw the arc in her story, you felt for her as a human becoming a full Rasper.
She'll never win the Emmy because she went full Rasper, but
we told her that, never go full Rasper.
Chloe, of course, had the stumps as well, so she couldn't walk. She had green screen socks on, and then she had these amazing stumps.
When we did Shelley for the first time, so nobody could see what we were doing, we'd walk her out of the trailer, out of the makeup trailer, and we took a sheet, we cut one single hole out of it because she could only see out of one eye, and she had to walk around. She looked like a ghost. So we were like, what are they doing over there on American Horror Story? They're doing bedsheet ghosts.
We're just going back to the basics.
We're just going back to the basics.
Keeping me looking fresh.
The Raspers kept us on our toes, certainly, both here in the lab as well as on set with painting and all kinds of different vein techniques and things just to really bring out those characters.
It was silicone, it was transfers, it was tattoo transfers, and then they came up with this baldies, netting kind of weird skin thing. I mean, and then it was 4 different colors of dirt and goop and blood and everything.
Action!
The Raspers seemed like one of those characters that just seemed to be in this constant evolution. As we progressed through the series, they sort of changed as well.
The experiment is over.
Where's your place, old man?
We honor you in Jesus Christ.
Stick it up your ass, Father.
But we also had the demonic possession, which was 3 separate makeups, I think. We started, and that was, we wanted it to be, not just veins on the face, we wanted it to be of different elements to it, and the guys ended up painting it with flesh tone veins. We had 2 different sets of contacts.
One of my favorite paint jobs in a makeup that I've seen in a long time.
We did a whole thing in the barn with one of your guys' cows that was gutted, and be like, we want a gutted goat, and I'm like, how about a cow? I know they have a cow at the shop. They're like, cow's fine, cow's fine. They're like, okay, moving on. Check, 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 check. We had tons of throat slashings, tons of blood gags, just everybody. We had Sarah Paulson giving herself an abortion, and people having swollen eyes and bruises and cuts, and just that just went on and on and on and on.
With the Raspers, like, man, we want his guts to hit the floor. It's like, call the shop real quick, have him send over a bucket full of guts.
Which we happen to have just laying around, bucket full of guts. The man getting his face eaten off. I mean, that was a really cool makeup.
So cool. This is a bladder with a vacuform protection to keep it from the bite. It's got a blood tube that's going to make the blood gush from underneath the appliance, and these strands of nylon here will simulate tendons and flesh.
I mean, it was one of those ones that could have failed very easily, or you could have only shot it from this one angle, and it might work if you light it and shadow it from here. But every photo and every angle that I saw of that thing, it was one of those makeups that I looked at and said, oh, I want to do that. That's a cool makeup. Who made that? I mean, 25 years ago, that would have been a cover of a Fangoria magazine. And now it's sort of this obscure thing that gets lost in the mix of these other really cool things that you see.
We'll start with Ian's mouth here, and he'll pull away, and there'll be blood there. It'll start to flow, and they're just going to fall right out of frame. It's a very quick shot.
All these blood gags that are being done almost every day of the show are full neck prosthetics that have tubes and systems and, these pressure valves. And blood gags themselves are very difficult because they're unpredictable. I mean, within a range, you can kind of predict that the blood's going to come out from this spot.
Right.
and it should only shoot this far, and we've only put so much blood in the container, but you kind of never know.
So you want to just bite this and pull it out. Pull it right out.
It's funny also, the day we shot that Ian McShane, we were like, okay, so now you have to grab onto these bits of nylon that are inside underneath this makeup, and you're gonna pull on them, and that's when we're gonna juice the blood.
And then at that point, Ian, there's going to be blood like shooting into your face too. So it's going to be a bloody mess. Yes.
It works first take, which is always great.
I bit an inmate's cheek. It's the tastiest part of any animal, you know that, the cheek, especially fish.
Cut to like 2 days later, we're shooting Santa Claus in the head out in front of a grocery store, and here comes Ian McShane, very calm, and I'm like, hey Ian, and he jumps at me like he was gonna bite my face. It scared the crap out of me.
He did. Mike was like, oh,
Yeah,
he was like, ha, gotcha.
Blah!
Are you ready for me? Yes.
We didn't want Francis to have to wear the rig, which was going to be, what it ended up being, like 11-foot wingspan or something, or it's really big.
I think by the time it actually fully extends,
it's like 11 feet.
And after it starts flapping, it's actually got some...
It's got some torque
power
to it. So we found a bunch of reference photos and things that Ryan wanted, and he said, I want it to look really organic, but I want to do it with visual effects. And so I talked to Jason Piccioni, who's our visual effects guy. He's helped us so much, and he said, why don't you guys build wings and we'll shoot it on green screen? And I was like, that sounds like a really good match. So we proposed that to Ryan, and Ryan said, okay. And it's so beautiful, and she looks so amazing. I was really happy with her whole look, and Kim Ayers did her makeup. She did her makeup the first season as well, so I just had her do her again, and she did a beautiful job. She looked amazing.
I thought that you were the first person who could understand. I do understand. No, you don't.
Bloodyface he's sort of the signature serial killer in this series, and Ryan looking for an iconic image, I think, to sell around this character. And so when you start breaking it down, you realize that it's Leatherface, and I think that was the hardest thing to sort of overcome, which is how we're going to come up with a unique design that is interesting, that people will be scared of. But when designing a character like Bloodyface, I always found it very important to sort of get behind the reason why you're creating this mask. So the end result of Bloodyface was this idea that he would remove the skin off of the faces of the ladies that he murdered, and he would turn it inside out.
I had such high hopes for you.
The concept behind that was the killer, Bloodyface, then becomes closer in contact with the person. His lips are touching her lips. His eyes are seeing through her into her soul, even though only because of the reverse concept of the flesh. I know it gets really weird and philosophical and bizarre, but at the same time, it helps us figure out how we should design this and what method we should approach.
I took her teeth.
The teeth that were put in were sewn with sinew, so you would have to constantly be tweaking them and making sure they weren't too bucky. Well, there's a fine line between having a bunch of chiclet teeth and it looking like a buck-toothed smiley guy who's way too happy, right, and something very horrific, and just the minor tilt to one tooth can make a huge difference. When Dylan was cast, we made a completely new mask to fit his head perfectly.
That last episode where he's just smoked a bunch of crack, Alfonso, our director, Gomez Rayon, did this really great shot where it's like just black holes for eyes. I was like, whoa, that looks so scary. Even me, who's like, I'm not scared about anything.
Looking at the alien, there's a history in our mind behind why we're building the character a certain way. So if we were to really break down anatomically how the alien works and its functions and for what reasons, we know all that. The concept is that it could extend its arms or its legs. There's basically 6 limbs on it, and it could reach heights of 10 to 12 feet. sort of being menacing and overpowering to a 6 foot tall human. But then it could also come down and work on its short hind legs and be around the same height of a 6 foot human.
Guys on these arms, so maybe it's kind of, it's doing something with the arms. These arms, this one's fully mechanical, so you can get that kind of going.
Seeing it move, it certainly was made to work well. It's two elements. It's essentially some more high-tech technology with servos and remote controls. And then there's also some very classic techniques that involve just simple rods coming from the wrists and the arms, so we could do very broad, gross movements with puppeteers.
We had 6 puppeteers on the Alien at one point. I mean, all the way up into the last minute, we were like, let's make it more scary.
Yeah, how do you make it more scary? So the combination of the two, and you get something that's very fluid and organic, and that's what we wanted with this Alien. And so there's a lot behind what it can do and what it should be able to do. And then all of a sudden you get to set and they're like, no, we just want it to hover here and turn its head, and you're going, you didn't need to build all this for that. You can have all the best intentions, but if you don't express that, if there's no exposition for it in the storyline, it'll go lost and just become obscure. And I think that's what kind of happened to the Alien. It just sort of became this weird, obscure thing. I think everything we did lent itself to the story properly. And when people can't go to bed at night, and when people turn off the TV or they can't watch it week to week, then I know that we've done at least our portion of the job very well.
Absolutely.
Jesus! You're trying to give me a heart attack? I said wait for my signal that the coast is clear. Nobody can know you're here.
Sorry. I just got so excited. Is this really the place where you keep Bloody Face locked up?
You bet your sweet ass, beautiful. In the men's ward. But we'll get to that in a minute. Welcome to Briafcliff. Built in 1908 as a tuberculosis ward. It's the largest on the East Coast. Today, we have all kinds of crazies in here. Schizos, maniac killers. Personally, I prefer my loonies to be a little kinky. What about you?
Everybody loves a freak.
You're telling me. We start our tour here. This is the cell of Miss Lana Winters. She was a damn good-looking broad. Great legs, nice rack. Told us she came in here on purpose to work on a newspaper story, but truth is, she had a thing for broads, if you know what I mean. Her lady friend signed the papers that said she was wacko, and Sister Jude didn't waste a second reforming her of her evil ways.
Help me!
Even had Dr. Arden zap her memories out of her with some electroshock therapy. After she escaped, she didn't get far. Crashed a man's car after he picked her up on the side of the road. She also had some issues with some of the inmates in here. Old Bloody Face wasn't too keen on her. Dr. Thredson seemed to be the only one who was interested in the case. She disappeared with him one night. Maybe he was able to set her straight.
Baby needs colostrum.
This next cell was Grace's. Pretty little thing, about 19 years old. Story was, she killed her entire family in cold blood with an axe. Grace took a real shine to old Bloody Face. Used to hear him talking through the walls in solitary together. They had tried escaping one night. Didn't last too long on the outside. She came back muttering about aliens, out of her mind. Haven't seen her lately. This next stop started out as my favorite. Sexy Shelley. our resident nymphomaniac. Never met a Tom, Dick, or Harry she didn't like. Even after Sister Jude shaved off half her hair. Her husband brought her in here because he found her in bed one night, stooping not one, but 2 Navy guys during Fleet Week. Gotta love a woman who can pull double duty, right?
Sure.
She even told the common room that Bloody Face was hers to try it with Greek style. She always got what she wanted.
Come on, girl. I'll help you look. You never know where she might be hiding.
Pushed me down and knocked me out cold the night Grace, Bloody Face, and Lana tried to escape.
Why'd you stop?
Sorry, Carl.
Never saw her again. Sure do miss her.
You were a very naughty girl last night. You tried to fly away, so I had to clip your wings.
That's the Mexican's room. Middle-aged broad who loved twirling around and wearing crazy makeup. She disappeared the same night Shelley did. Some of the orderlies think maybe Dr. Arden was involved somehow, but I don't see him going for meat from south of the border. Me? I'm not so picky. This cage belongs to Pepper. Creepy-looking pinheaded girl. She seems harmless, but don't let that looks fool you. She got her extended stay with us because she drowned her sister's baby and cut his ears off. Look at this.
That's scary.
It gets scarier. We've got private rooms in this place, too. That's where they perform the exorcisms.
People still believe in those?
If you had seen what happened to that kid, Jed Potter, it'd make you a believer, too. The boy was possessed. Ripped open his family's prize cow and ate its heart.
Yes, we've already heard that bit. Now skip ahead.
His parents brought him here and prayed that he could be saved, but no dice. Poor kid.
He's dead.
Call me superstitious, but I like to stay as far away from the private rooms as possible. Got enough to deal with on the ward, like this one, Willie Hines. Used to like to say the same thing over and over.
Crackerjack ass munch.
Like crackerjack ass munch. He died, never did find out how. This is where Spivey bunks. Big loco spick with a penchant for hurling his own shit at you.
I made a mess, sister. You want to see it?
Liked fighting too. Took down Bloody Face his first day on the floor.
That's so violent.
Oh yeah. And this is what you've been waiting for. The place that Kit Bloody Face Walker calls home. Real piece of work, that one. His victims were found naked. Their entire bodies skinned like potatoes. Apparently while they were still alive, so they could feel every cut of the knife.
I'm a school teacher. The children, they won't understand.
Well, their faces over his own like a mask. He even killed his own dark chocolate wife and then concocted some crazy story about how aliens had kidnapped her.
Ah! Answer me! Where are you?
And he swore up and down that she was still alive somewhere.
Kid!
Alma!
Help me!
Funny thing is, he didn't really seem like the killing type. But you never know what dark things are going on inside of people's minds.
Daddy'll be there in a minute.
So I guess this concludes our little spin around the joint.
Think I could take a look inside?
You are kinky. me some of that sugar you've been promising.
Let me out of here! Let me out of here, you little whore! You bitch! You come back here!
I don't want to die.
Well, it's not all about you. Nobody wants to die, but I almost did. Before I was even born, my mother wanted to kill me with a coat hanger.
She sounds like a terrible woman. Did she tell you she didn't want you?
I heard her say it out loud. She called me a monster and wanted to get rid of me. My father was different. He loved me. I could hear it in his voice.
And you had to live with that your whole life?
This is a mercy killing, Oliver. No baby should have to grow up knowing daddy's bloody.
That's my bitch mother.
He'll never have to know. Kit Walker is gonna take the fall for those crimes. I promise you it'll all work out.
That's my father.
Is that how you see it?
I don't really understand. But it's obvious you've gone through some emotional trauma. But you can work through it.
I am working it through! I have a role model!
You can't be honest with it.
Trust me. It's not my mother.
Please let me go. I won't tell anyone.
Donna Burton. Why did you choose her?
This is my favorite part.
What did you like about her?
Her skin was fuzzy like a peach, and I wanted to feel it.
So you skinned her alive.
Practice makes perfect.
Oh, Monsignor, I'm so grateful to see you recovering. I'm so flattered that you have such faith in our ability to look after you.
Oh, I wouldn't want to be tended to by anyone other than you, little sister. You are my angel of mercy.
Thank you. Take him upstairs. He'll stay in my room.
You're so very kind.
You've been through a savage ordeal. The kind of ordeal that can destroy a person's faith. You'll need peace and quiet to heal your soul, as well as your wounds.
What are you waiting for? An engraved invitation? Carry him up!
Monsignor.
Mother Claudia, I'd recommend that you wait for me in my study. There are things in here that cannot be unseen. What weakness makes a man find pleasure in hurting his fellow man?
The sin is in the infliction of pain, not in the intention.
Still no sign of Dr. Arden. Both his apartment and his offices were left unmolested. Wherever he snuck off, he took nothing with him.
Men like Arden are used to disappearing.
Men of science?
Men of the Parte Adler.
Yes, I've heard of those ugly, unfounded rumors, but have yet to see any proof.
Look around you. The beast is here, Monsignor. You may have vanquished his spirit when you freed sweet Sister Mary Eunice, but its claws and tentacles cover every wall of this place like so many creeping vines.
She fell.
You are very gifted at that.
At what?
absolving yourself.
You speak out of turn.
Injustices and evil have occurred here. Sister Jude told me about the reported woman, and Arden, and plenty more. We may not be responsible, but we are complicit. We are of the cloth. We must make things right.
What will you have me do?
Sister Jude does not belong here. She must be released.
Shall I just open the door and let her walk out? Sister Jude was committed here by a magistrate. I am a man of God, but I am bound by the laws of man.
Then start the process. Call the magistrate.
We're at a very sensitive time here, Mother Claudia. All of my work, Sister Jude's work. Now, I can explain away the disappearance of Dr. Arden as a sabbatical and Sister Mary Eunice's fall as a tragic accident, but if I start letting the world know that patients are being admitted into Briarcliff under false circumstances, unbeknownst to me, subjected to electroshock treatment, torture, then I put all of it at risk.
Your ambition blinds you.
The power of my good work blinds me. The thousands, hundreds of thousands saved from mental illness. We are on the cusp. Now, I will make sure that Sister Jude is comfortable and receives special treatment, but I cannot do anything that would jeopardize our mission.
Let's drive up to Boston for the weekend. I'm dying to see Jules and Jim. Let's see if the Red Sox are at home. What's going on? Who was that on the phone?
It's my sister. She's pregnant. Sometimes I worry that it's not going to be enough. Just the two of us.
Who needs kids?
I mean, I'm talking about family. You don't ever wish we could have a family?
Oh, baby. You are my family. You're all I need. Miss Smith? Jane?
Sorry, Doctor. Lost in thought.